Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Perhaps the defining feature of the human race, when one considers the whole of its history, is that it comes up with ideas. The term idea is almost impossible to define without using the word idea, but essentially it means having a goal or a purpose and devising some way to get it done. The goal or purpose part is certainly not unique to human beings. Animals have all kinds of goals, like getting food or mating or finding shelter. Even the second part, devising some way to get it done, is not something that we have monopolized. Animals such as ants come up with brilliant schemes for getting their food. Whales and birds are experts at pulling off long journeys to get somewhere. No person could hope to construct a spider web like a spider. So what is so unique about our ability to come up with ideas? Perhaps the answer to this question is that we think them through instead of them simply emerging from instinct. We may not have the natural talent of a beaver to build a dam, but we sure can study the subject and come up with ways to get the job done. If we wanted, we could probably weave a pretty good spider web, given the right materials and enough financial support. Since we came down from the trees, we have been very good at getting to the heart of the problem and working out a way to solve it. It's a good bet that if some advanced alien life form came here to observe us, the ability to come up with ideas is what they would list as our key talent. Ideas are what took us down from those trees to begin with. They are what got us through the interminable ice ages and the endless millennia on the savannah. They brought us into the caves and brought us out again. They gave us fire and the wheel and the ability to grow our own food. They gave us the greatest gift of all, spoken and then written language, to communicate our ideas to each other and to make them understood. Without this, almost all of our brilliant ideas would have been dormant, undeveloped dreams in the minds of whoever was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be infected by them. Language itself is an idea. There is nothing inherent to the word egg that suggests an egg, but with the idea that we can communicate the idea of that thing with this sound, we can do almost anything. Ideas, of course, are not limited to practical inventions like fire or weapons or words. They span the entire range of the mind, from numbers to the notion of a deity. They include fashion and competition and love and meaninglessness among their vast domain of subjects. When we think about anything, we use our long heritage of ideas. We are more addicted to them than we are to our smartphones. Those phones will be gone in a decade or two, replaced by whatever comes next. But ideas will be infecting and expanding the human mind until we manage to outsource all of our thinking to a machine, which does it all faster and more efficiently and without breaking a sweat. When that happens, we are finished. We have probably had an equal number of good ideas as we have had bad. This is just the law of averages playing out. It is hard to tell when an idea will be good or bad. Sometimes something can seem like the most brilliant idea possible, but it ends up resulting in disaster. Everyone knows this. We have all experienced it in our personal lives and seen it at play in societies and nations as a whole. Sometimes individuals or segments of the society can see this coming, but they frequently find that there is nothing they can do about it. It is like screaming to the wind. The idea, as great as it sounds, will lead to no good, but the warnings fall on deaf ears because it just seems too good to fail. It would be great if we had some kind of filter that weeded out all the bad ideas before they got past the drawing board. But we don't, and that, in a sense, is all of human history. The Torah has its share of both good ideas and bad ideas. Of the former, love your neighbor as yourself has to rank up there among the all-timers. So does let my people go. But they are matched by such brilliant but flawed ideas as eating from that tree or sending out the spies. There is no question that both of these great schemes would have looked good on paper if there was any paper to look good on. But they both ended in catastrophes, the results of which we are still paying the price for in one way or another. This week's Parsha is called Korach. That word is one of the better known examples of the somewhat rare occurrence of a Parsha being named after a person. There are 5 or perhaps 6 of these in the Jewish tradition of naming the Parshas. Only this one and one other are named after a classic bad guy. Korach has become forever infamous as the epitome of an evil person, even though what he attempted to do doesn't sound all that bad. He simply proposed the wrong idea at perhaps the wrong time and was condemned to eternal hell for his plan. It was an unfortunate fate for a person whom Jewish tradition holds to have had great potential. But such is the fate of those who come up with great ideas that turn out to be problematic. What did he do that was so terrible? Most of the Parsha deals with his so-called rebellion. It is fitting that the Parsha is named after him, since this is really his story. His basic idea, which begins with the opening verse of the Parsha, was to take a small group of second-tier leaders and challenge the authority of Moshe and the priesthood of his brother Aaron. While this does sound like a genuine rebellion, and it was couched what would probably sound to any of us today as a pretty good idea. He wanted equality in the hierarchy of Israelite society. What could be wrong with that? Korach himself was a Levite. He had the hereditary privilege of serving in the Mishkan with whatever status that gave him. But he wasn't satisfied with this honor. Instead, he organized a group of leaders from other tribes, mostly from that of Reuven, who early in Israelite history was the firstborn of Yaakov. He had been demoted by certain rash actions, and his brother Yehuda and eventually the Levites took over the reins. Korach had a secure position in the Levite hierarchy, but he wanted more. He wanted to eliminate the entire institution of the priesthood. His dramatic statement of rebellion was, quote, "All of this community is holy, and HaShem is among them. So why do you," meaning Moshe and Aaron, "assert yourselves above the community of HaShem?" Things went from bad to worse. Moshe delayed things until the next morning, hoping that cooler heads would show up, but they didn't. He put things in the hands of God to demonstrate who was indeed holy enough to present the offerings in the Mishkan. When God actually got involved in the matter, it was to threaten the entire group with destruction. This was not what Moshe really wanted, but it is what happened. Korach and his group were physically set aside from everyone else, and Hashem caused a great sinkhole to spring up in the desert, which swallowed the leaders of the group, along with their families. The rest were consumed in some sort of fire. This great act of divine intervention didn't really stave off the problem. The rest of the people, who had been largely uninvolved up to this point, complained that Moshe had arranged the killing of, quote, Hashem's people. Again, divine wrath ensued, and a plague swept through the people. In the end, about 15,000 people died as a result of this great idea. It resulted in certain permanent changes to the priesthood, the Levites, and the structure of Israelite society. Let's examine Korach's core idea a little closer. He was challenging Moshe's authority, and thus indirectly that of God. He was directly confronting the institution of the priesthood and its unique position in the Israelite religious structure. But his basic idea was that, quote, "We are all holy. Why should any one person or group be set above everyone else?" On the surface, this suggestion seems to be quite reasonable. They were all holy. Why was it that one group, the descendants of Aaron, were selected to be the only ones who could actively participate in the central religious ceremonies of the people? These ceremonies were not sideshows in their lives. They were the events around which everything else revolved. They were the means of a connection to God, and thus everyone's lives depended on them. On top of that was the position of Moshe himself. There is no question that up to this point, he was the undisputed leader and the one who made every major decision since the Exodus. There was no room for challenging his authority, but that in and of itself could have been seen as a huge problem. Why should there be one undisputed leader who controlled everything? Why shouldn't things have been run more democratically? Would it have been so terrible if a Congress or an Assembly of Representatives made the decisions instead of one person? It is a good bet that if any of us today were somehow projected back in time to that moment, we would have seen the validity of Korach's idea. We would have said, if we were given the voice, that we live in such a society and it works much better. The days of dictatorship are over, we would have insisted, and we have created a much more egalitarian way of doing things. This is really what Korach was proposing. So why is he such a bad guy? This is not an easy question to answer. It is automatic to place him in the bad guy category, but it isn't so obvious what exactly was wrong with his idea. What is wrong with equality? Perhaps the answer lies in the hidden realm of consequences. Equality is a good idea, but perhaps it shouldn't be applied to everything in every situation. Some segments of society demand inequality, as harsh and as racist as that might sound. We all know this to be true in certain situations, but we are all reluctant to voice it in words. Korach's mistake was to apply equality to the wrong circumstances. Israelite religion at that time, and perhaps even now, required a hierarchy of authority. Suggesting otherwise, as good as it sounds now, and probably sounded then, would not have worked. Judaism might have never arisen, as it very possibly would have been lost in the fog of history. It would have been one more of the long line of great movements that evaporated by being watered down with well-meaning ideas. Ideas are wonderful things. They're what keep the wheels of the human race turning. They're the fuel that keeps progress flowing like a river and enables civilization to solve the myriad of problems that arise. But for every good idea, there comes a lousy one. This is just the way things are. Bad ideas with good intentions are about as dangerous as things can get in human development. It takes a prophet to see the difference between a good idea and a bad one. They aren't always around when we need them. Let's hope that we have a healthy supply of them when the bad ideas inevitably spring up. Shabbat Shalom.